What is the specific mechanism within the Treaty of Lisbon that allows for the alteration of voting procedures within the Council of the European Union from unanimity to qualified majority voting without formal treaty amendments, and under what conditions is it applicable? A. The simplified treaty amendment procedure, applicable only in non-sensitive policy areas and requiring a unanimous vote in the European Council and subsequent ratification by all member states' parliaments. B. The passerelle clause, applicable across all policy areas except for those affecting fundamental state sovereignty, requiring unanimous approval by the European Council and no objections from national parliaments within a set period. C. The Lisbon Flexibility Clause, which can be invoked exclusively in cases where the treaties have not provided the necessary powers to adopt a specific measure, subject to the approval of the European Parliament. D. The Ordinary Revision Procedure, a simplified method for changing fundamental aspects of EU governance, including voting procedures, necessitating a convention and intergovernmental conference. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The Passerelle Clause, or Bridge Clause, in the Treaty of Lisbon provides a mechanism for transitioning legislative decision-making from unanimity to qualified majority voting in the Council, or from a special to the ordinary legislative procedure, without needing to amend the treaties. This clause is designed to enhance decision-making efficiency on certain matters. Its activation requires unanimous agreement in the European Council and that no national parliament objects to this change. The clause is a testament to the EU's adaptability, allowing institutions to respond to evolving needs and integrate more deeply without undergoing the lengthy treaty amendment process. Within the EU's legislative framework, how does the principle of institutional balance shape interactions between the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of the European Union, particularly in legislative negotiations? A. It mandates equal legislative powers among the three institutions, ensuring that each has an equal role in the drafting, proposal, and approval of EU legislation. B. It delineates specific roles and responsibilities for each institution to prevent any one entity from usurping excessive power, thereby ensuring that legislative negotiations reflect a balanced consideration of varied interests and perspectives. C. Institutional balance requires that all legislative proposals receive unanimous support from all three institutions before becoming law, emphasizing consensus over majority rule. D. It specifies that the European Commission has ultimate authority over legislative outcomes, with the European Parliament and Council serving advisory roles to maintain a balance of interests. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The principle of institutional balance is fundamental to the functioning of the EU, ensuring that the specific roles and powers allocated to each main institution, the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council of the European Union, are respected and maintained. This principle prevents any one institution from dominating the legislative process and ensures a system of checks and balances. In legislative negotiations, this means that each institution must play its designated role, proposing legislation, Commission, debating and amending proposals, Parliament, and adopting legislation, Council, in a manner that reflects a balanced consideration of different interests, enhancing the legitimacy and democratic nature of EU lawmaking. What critical role does the principle of proportionality play in the EU's legislative and policy-making processes, especially in relation to the depth and scope of legislation enacted by EU institutions? A. It restricts EU legislative actions to those necessary to achieve the objectives of the treaties, requiring that any action taken should not exceed what is necessary to achieve the objectives outlined. B. The principle mandates that all EU legislation must uniformly apply across all member states without allowing for national discretion, ensuring proportional representation of all states' interests. C. It ensures that the financial contributions of member states to the EU budget are directly proportional to their GDP, influencing the scope of legislation and policies they can propose. D. Proportionality dictates the allocation of legislative and executive powers between the EU institutions and member states, determining the depth of legislation based on the economic capacity of member states. Correct answer. A. Explanation. The principle of proportionality is a cornerstone of EU lawmaking and policy-making, ensuring that the actions of the EU are limited to what is necessary to achieve the objectives set out in the EU treaties. This principle governs the depth and scope of EU legislation, ensuring that measures enacted by EU institutions do not go beyond what is necessary to address the issues at hand. It serves as a safeguard against overregulation and ensures that EU policies and legislation are justified and appropriate in relation to their intended objectives, maintaining a balance between the means employed and the aims pursued. In the EU legislative context, how does the Regulatory Fitness and Performance Programme, REFIT, impact the review and simplification of existing EU legislation? A. REFIT mandates a strict timetable for the automatic repeal of all EU legislation deemed outdated or unnecessary, streamlining the legislative framework without direct institutional oversight. B. It is a comprehensive program initiated by the European Commission to ensure that EU legislation is fit for purpose, efficient, and does not impose unnecessary burdens, involving systematic review and consultation processes. C. The program assigns the responsibility of reviewing and simplifying existing legislation exclusively to the European Parliament, focusing on reducing regulatory costs for businesses. D. REFIT operates as an intergovernmental initiative, where member states propose specific pieces of legislation for repeal based on national priorities, focusing primarily on sovereignty issues. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The Regulatory Fitness and Performance Programme, REFIT, is an initiative by the European Commission aimed at ensuring EU legislation remains fit for purpose, effective, efficient, and free of unnecessary burdens. It involves a systematic review of the EU's legislative stock to identify opportunities for simplification, removal of redundant measures, and reduction of regulatory burdens. REFIT encompasses a broad range of consultation processes and impact assessments, ensuring that the legislative framework supports economic growth and innovation while maintaining high standards of consumer, worker, and environmental protection. It reflects the EU's commitment to smart regulation and the continuous improvement of its legal environment. Considering the EU's commitment to environmental sustainability and the European Green Deal, how does the interinstitutional agreement on better lawmaking facilitate the integration of sustainability goals into the legislative process? A. By requiring that all legislative proposals undergo a green check to assess their environmental impact, with veto power granted to the European Environmental Agency. B. It includes specific provisions for integrating sustainability goals, ensuring that legislative proposals are assessed for the potential environmental impact in alignment with the European Green Deal's objectives. C. The agreement prioritizes legislative proposals related to the European Green Deal, fast-tracking them through a special legislative procedure that bypasses standard committee reviews. D. Better lawmaking establishes an environmental impact quota, requiring that a fixed percentage of all legislation passed each year directly support the European Green Deal's goals. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The interinstitutional agreement on better lawmaking between the European Parliament, the Council of the European Union, and the European Commission is designed to improve the quality of EU legislation and ensure it is effective and efficient. Within the context of the European Green Deal, this agreement facilitates the integration of sustainability goals into the legislative process by ensuring that proposals are assessed for their environmental impact. This includes evaluating how new legislation aligns with the EU's broader environmental and climate objectives, ensuring that the EU's legislative actions contribute to its commitment to becoming a climate-neutral economy by 2050. The agreement underscores the EU institutions' collective responsibility to incorporate sustainability considerations systematically into their work,